Podcast.
Good day, my fellow Kings of War players. Welcome to a very special episode of Newbie Podcast. Why is it special? Because today I have no guests. I am speaking alone, so this will be a very interesting episode indeed. Firstly, I would like to address that I haven't been posting content lately. To be honest, I have been pretty busy with work, and when I do have free time, I've been playing quite a few games actually, because I am testing out lists that I would like to play and to finalize on a list for the upcoming Clash of Kings Asia that's happening this weekend at the time of recording, February 22nd to 20 of 2025. So, busy with work, free time goes to playing some games to test out lists. So why I decided to post this episode today, because I had an epiphany of what I've learned. So I'd like to share this with the fellow audience out there. So I've been trying out Abyss, Northern Alliance, Green Lady, and Goblins, and that would be the most recent 4 armies that I play on my channel. So I'm trying to find the perfect list to bring to Clash of Kings 2025. So it led me to creating this episode. So without further clickbaiting, I'll just tell you the gist of this episode, which is titled I Have Found the Perfect List. To be honest, the perfect list does not exist, or at least it shouldn't, because if a list is so strong, then it would be nerfed by the rules committee, because there shouldn't be one list to rule them all, right? There's no perfect list. You can build a good enough list, and then it's practice from there. And key thing, your list will have strong and weak matchups, and it's all about practice to know how to dominate the stronger matchups and how to overcome the weaker matchups to come away with either a small loss or draw, or even a win, or even a small win even. So bear with me as I go down this rabbit hole of the thoughts and stuff that I've learned in the past few months actually. Just to go back a bit of history, since third edition started in late 2019, early 2020, I've played Green Lady. I started with Basileia for a short while, but after that I settled in on Green Lady, Order of the Green Lady that is, and I've been playing it for 3 years if you follow the content on my channel, and I've had success with Green Lady in the past years, most notably placing top 10 in some of the international Newbie tournaments, including Call to Arms, back when it was the only and most popular international Universal Battle tournament, as well as the quintessentially Quail Cup came in the finals. And back then when I played Green Lady, the Forsaken, although the Forsaken doesn't even unlock. So one of the challenge of the Green Lady list is building the list itself, because the unlocks are a very big challenge. And after playing, I've been playing Green Lady, and I've been pretty much a Alpha Strike player. I like being fast and charging first, and I've played games where I've not played Alpha Strike lists in the past, and I found that I find more success playing Alpha Strike lists. To me, it's easier, but maybe to a player with a different play preference, it might not be the case. But for me, I find it easier to play Alpha Strike, at least for myself. And in 23, I've been playing Green Lady for 3 years. I wanted to start a new faction. So after toying with a few ideas, I decided to go with Goblins. So it was like almost the complete opposite of my Green Lady faction. And the lists, of course, it's all trash and shooting. So firstly I have to build the models, right? I've been building the models over the whole of 2023 while playing games with them. And in early 2024, I went to Clash of Kings Asia, which was I think late Jan 24. So starting of 2024, I took 3rd place. So was pretty okay with the result. There were some weaknesses in my list which my opponent fully took advantage of, which is I had difficulty dealing with defense 6. And he charged both his defense 6 regiments of wraiths into the forest, of which when it hit there, I couldn't remove it at all. It was hard to deal damage with defense 6 and cover, and then he had life leech and drain life to take off wounds. During the Clash of Kings 2024, I won Northern Alliance Army Box. It was an old one, but with that, I decided that, my next army that I'm going to build is Northern Alliance. So I did have my Northern Alliance build, and in fact, have quite a few games on the channel. And initially I thought Clash of Kings 2025, I'll bring a new army and a new army display board. I like display boards as well. So I wanted to do Northern Alliance. So at first, I fell in love with the Hearthguard, although you can only bring 2 units now, 15-17, with access to Rally 1680, inbuilt Fury, their defense 5, and their 20 attacks on CS2, and they are on heavy infantry, so they're not affected by phalanx. So I kind of love them, having my main hammers being from the Green Lady. They all come at Crushing 1, Thunderous 1, and they are affected by phalanx, so this was a breath of fresh air, inbuilt waiver mitigation, and a possibility of raising the nerf by 1 with Rally in the list. So I built a high drop list. I think my first list I built was 17 drops with 50 of them scoring and a lot of class pointed units. After some initial success, I felt that players are getting used to the army list and are able to deal with my list, and I played them for maybe half a year before I noticed all the flaws. Firstly, it was a slow list, and I like Alpha Strike, right? I like fast. And for some reason, I struggled with getting Pack Hunters to work, and that was even before it was nerfed. Yep, with no steady aim, if I want to shoot, they tend not to move, right? So they tend to stay in near the deployment zones. Turn 1, they move up 5 inches and they sit there and shoot. And when I need them to charge, they're too far back, right? They're not in position to charge. And if my shooting is not strong enough to force the opponent to come to me being a slow list, then I need to send up something substantial to start the trade. Not just send up Chef, because Chef can be killed or opponent can deal with it quite trivially, but I wanted to send Pack Hunters to start the trade, but the Pack Hunters were back there. So the list doesn't really work for me. Yep, and for some reason I feel that Hearthguard doesn't really cut it anymore. Sometimes I feel 20 attacks and CS2 might not even be enough. Probably you need multi-charges. Yep, or they might kill 1 unit and then they die. They're also a slow unit, right? So I've been struggling to find success with a combined arms list, which is essentially what my Northern Alliance is. In last October, I had a local tourney. I lost to KJ's Imperial Dwarf, and that Dwarf list has the formation and a lot of wound recovery and wound mitigation in. It brought heal, 2 Radiance of Life. Gorlock's Fury has Iron Resolve. He had Buckskin and even had Scorched Earth as well. So I lost pretty badly that game. And after that, Clash of Kings dropped and Abyssals got a refresh. I had an Abyssal army for a long time, and I was waiting for a refresh to the army. So Clash of Kings dropped. I decided to go back into Abyss. But I quickly realized the hammers were very soft, right? You're looking at Morlocks, they are 16-18 defense 4. Berserkers, they're also 16-18 defense 4. Easy to kill. Or the Abyssal Horsemen, they are defense 5, but they are dash 16. The nerf is 1 point lower than the usual 17. Okay, so Abyssal Berserkers, there was a lot of hype about them in the early release. I would say they're good. Yes, they're better Lycans in general. Similar profile, speed 9 nimble, defense 4 with regen. They have 1 pip of nerf higher than Lycans, and they have more attacks, although they hit on 4s, but 30 attacks on 4s is 15 hits, and on 5s is 10 hits. The Lycans, 18 attacks on 3s is 12 hits. Lycans do have Pathfinder, and they have lower point cost as well. So they are like overall better Lycans. Lycans are not dominating the meta, right? At the end of the day, speed 9 with Nimble is good, but they still lose to Flyers, even without Nimble, right? Flyers still out-threat you, while they only pay a few more points than you. Like the Order of the Forsaken is only 10 points more than the Berserk. And flying is a much bigger deal than non-flying, because once a flying unit doesn't get grounded, it can easily fly across the field and hit something in the flank. Whereas a nimble unit, even if you don't stop him, because it still has to find a lane on the ground to pass through, there's still a lot of things it couldn't charge. So yeah, flying is a big deal. Yep, so for Abyssals, I have the Seductress, Bale, Bazuzu, Well of Souls. I think these are all the unique units in the list, but they're all pretty expensive. So the list that I wanted to play fielded all these unique elements of the Abyss, including the Well and Cronius combo, and I even brought Bale. So it's quite a monster mash list. So very few pure hammer units, just that traditional big number of attacks. I think I only have 2 hammer units. And then with very little drops and very little unit strength, because a lot of expensive monsters, right? So I did win the losing to Flyers. I did win the game against Alexis Elves. The Elves did outshoot me and outcharge me. But I managed to set up to bait bad charges from the opponent, and the opponent took the bait. So he charged in, didn't kill a lot of stuff, and then I managed to counter punch him in the end. After playing Abyss for a while, I felt that the best Abyss list to me is the infantry list, because you have the Abyssal Guard with Rally. You can field multiple troops and even maybe one regiment or two, maybe with the Oath Break upgrade. And then you field Seductresses, or rather regiments. One with Hammer, one with Brew of Strength. Not sure if you'll take a third unit. You can upgrade them with that Pathfinder and Wild Charge D3, so they track pretty far. Then you mix in some Flame Bearers and Lower Abyssals, and I felt that's, if I were to build an Abyss list, I think that's the way to go. But I don't have those models. I got mainly the Morlocks and the Abyssal Horsemen and the Berserkers, so I don't have time to get all that infantry done. So next, so in my quest to find a good list, I felt that in the current meta, you need to have answers to a few archetypes, right? So the first one is Speed 10 Flyers. How do you do with that? A lot of Alpha Striking Speed 10 Flyers. Second question is, how do you do with a high number of shooting that can whittle down your units? Okay, do you have wound recovery? Do you have units that can dispose? You have units that can shield against shooting or tech. Then how do you deal with a lot of defense 6? That's another one. How do you deal with trash and counter punch lists? That includes, for example, Night Stalkers. If they field a lot of Scarecrows, like Adam Ballard's list, make you deal with the Scarecrows and then they counter punch. Or even Goblins with the Rebel. And even Forces of Nature list with maybe Earth Elemental regiments and hordes, make you crash into Earth Elementals, and then the greater Air Elementals surge into your flanks and rears. Okay, also how do you deal with sustained shenanigans, people with a lot of heal, with wound mitigation or recovery, regen, stuff like that. And also how do you deal with standard combined arms. So playing my Northern Alliance, I couldn't find the right balance that I like for the list to work, the combined arms approach. And my latest before I gave up, I fielded a horde of Frostclaw Riders. Those are the dwarves on birds, right? So before I fielded the element, I felt that the list lacked speed and it needed a little bit more shooting. So when I fielded it, I thought it would solve both problems, okay? Speed and shooting. But once again, after some initial success, in two of the most recent games, it died to spiked dice rolls. The first one, I shot at a Mind Screech, so with stealthy, but it's in the clear. So 12 attacks, I should have dealt 4 hits and probably about 3 wounds. I dealt less than that. And his nerf is 13-15, my nerf is 14-16. Right, so I did less than that, I didn't waver it. And then he shot me back. Lightning Bolt should be 3 hits and 2 wounds. He dealt 3 wounds and rolled an 11 to waver me. Then, because I got wavered, I was backed against some rocks, so I couldn't move back. Then next round, he shot at me with Alchemist's Curse and took out the unit. So that was Lam's TK, Twilight Kin. Then in another game against James Goblins, it went into the forest to shoot at trolls. And then after that, because he had to step into the forest to shoot, it got charged by Kuslo and Madfall. 5 attacks, he dealt 5 hits, 5 wounds, right? And then with the Ravenous Lizard, so that's like a sort of a dread effect. Then that was 6, and then he rolled an 8 to waver it. So after it got wavered, it got killed the following round once again. Although it was spiked rolls that killed them, but I guess it also showcased the vulnerability of this unit. Ultimately, it's a very expensive, low nerf 14-16 defense 4 unit. And that happens, and then when it happens, it really lost me the game. So at this point, I wasn't feeling confident with Northern Alliance, not feeling confident with Abyss. Time is ticking, so I was thinking of running Green Lady or Goblins. Locally, we have a player playing Green Lady already, so more. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go with Goblins again. Although I had hoped to field a different army for Clash of Kings the second year, I'm going back to Goblins. And this time around, it was quite a late decision and I found myself not enough time to practice. So with limited data on my games, it also built a lot of false perceptions for me. For example, when I had my 2 initial games against James' Night Stalkers list that he was trying out, the list was pretty slow with no shooting. So it was a very good matchup for me. Although it's stealthy, but he takes a long time to get to me, I just kept shooting at him. And the second game, he fielded some Mind Screechers with Lightning Bolt, but still, overall, the list is generally still quite slow, and I was still able to handle it. So that gave me some false confidence. Next game, immediately, I made some silly mistakes. My opponent had a dragon in the center, and I just exposed a flank to one of my hordes. Yeah, and that sort of cost me the game. Another problem was that he had 3 regiments of Knight Raiders because he's playing Varangur. And the 3 Knight Raiders just basically dealt a lot of damage the whole game. Even shooting at Rebel causes a lot of damage, right? Especially 2 of them were on the hill, the other one was shooting at things in the clear. Yep, yes. This got me to think also, initial success I had with Abyssal Burst against an opponent. He was also trying out lists, and he also mentioned generally he doesn't do well playing against fast lists. So another thing was the Frostclaw Horde, the Frostclaw Rider Hordes. I was thinking 2 games with Spike Rose, they died. I was feeling if I had more games, it gives me more data to feel that, okay, how vulnerable is this Frostclaw Horde really? If I have 10 games, how often do they die? How many of them are spiked rolls? How many of them just, not a lot of dice, but it just showcase how vulnerable or not vulnerable the Frost Horde is, and that gives me more information and confidence on whether I should field them and how I should run them, how conservative I need to be with them, because I want them to shoot, and if I were to be too conservative, then they wouldn't fulfill their role of shooting also maybe. Yeah, so there's all these considerations. There's another game I had with the Frostclaw Horde, but it got wavered by a solo Naiad Centurion charging in. But at that point, I was already winning the game, so it didn't matter as much. Yep, so in conclusion, there's no perfect list actually. Every list has its strengths and weaknesses, has its strong and weak matchups. So as long as you build a list that questions yourself, how do I deal with the arch that I mentioned earlier, speed 10, shooting, defense 6, trash, counterpunch, sustain, combined arms, then it should be generally okay. And then you should practice. I think practice is key. Okay, back then when I kept playing Order of the Green Lady, other than making small tweaks in my list, which I've tweaked over 3 years, I would play into a variety of matchups, and that gave me a lot of experience on how to handle the different matchups and different situations. I can't say, okay, I'm just going to change my list completely, so I have to find a way to make it work, because I was already convinced, okay, this is the best list I could field already. So now that variable is no longer there. Change up the units is no longer there. So how, with this unit, with this list, how do I make it work against whatever matchup I'm facing? So it really made me learn to practice to dominate the favorable matchups and overcome the unfavorable matchups. How do I overcome it? Yeah, I had a game quite a while back against James Empire of Dust. So he was fielding 3 hordes of skeleton spearmen. So at first, I just crashed into it, just charged it head on with all my cavalry, large cav. With the phalanx, I just died horribly, right? Yeah, I just bounced off where I thought I shouldn't, because I underestimated phalanx and then just got counter punched in the end. So I played against him again like in quick succession. I think within the same week or next week, with pretty much the same list against each other. And the second game, I ran 2 beasts of nature back then. So my beasts were dancing for 3 or 4 turns. Just keep flying and turning and flying, turning and flying and turning until I got, I think, a flank or rear charge. And not that I killed all the spears, all the hordes of spears. I just killed the ones that mattered for me to win the scenario. Okay, so I managed to win the second game. Same list on same list. With the experience, with knowing that I must somehow make it work. Yeah, Goblins versus Alex's Varangur. I got terrorized by 3 regiments of Knight Raiders. And of course, the Chimera charged one of my sharp sticks in the flanks. So that was very painful. And then following that, I had my Goblins versus Sean's Northern Alliance. So I moved my hordes up to let him charge everything, because I wanted to move my trombones and wingits in range to shoot at his juicy stuff. But in return, I lost 3 hordes very easily, and I had to climb back the 3 hordes that mattered, right, in the thick of things. The other 2 hordes remaining were on the far side. And I had to climb my way back into the game. And I was pressured to move up, I realized, because of the 3 regiment of pack hunters dealing quite a lot of damage once again. Thinking back, maybe I should have shot the pack hunters instead, because pack hunters with stealthy, but they are 13-15 defense 3, so lightning bolt hurts them quite a lot, so stealthy doesn't work against them. I have 10 lightning bolt, pseudo 12 with 2 rerolls in the list, conjuring stuff, piercing arrow, and we are playing command dice, generic command, so I still have no more accuracy on spells, but maybe I can +1 dice if I have the 3 points. and I can reroll the wound as well. Yep, and then with my sharpstick throwers, the ballista, shooting at it without cover, hitting on 5s because of stealthy is still not too bad, because if I can get one unit wavered or killed early, then it will lower his shooting power by 1/3, and then if I subsequently take out the other one, yeah, that might be the way to go if I were to analyze that game again. So I don't have to push up so quickly. Yep. Looking at the games against 3 Night Raiders, 3 Pack Hunters, and those were the same 3 Pack Hunters that when I made my own Northern Alliance list, I was lamenting that they weren't working in my list. But with somebody else piloting a Northern Alliance list, it's working. It's doing great, and it's even terrorizing me. My opponent, Sean, has been playing quite a lot of games of Northern Alliance. I think he started playing Northern Alliance about the same time as me. He has switched between Ogres and Halflings, but came back to Northern Alliance. And since I stopped playing Northern Alliance a while back, he has much more experience. I think more Northern Alliance games under his belt than me. And I think he's very comfortable with his list. Another thing that was the most recent game. So another thing I realized in that game was that I thought I was losing very badly, because I lost the 3 rebels early, then I had to claw my way back. And then, there was a horde of Ice Naiads that I know I couldn't take out, because I was losing a lot of shooting units. I don't have enough to take it out. But at the end of the day, we were playing control as a scenario. And when we have just a few scoring units left on each side, I'm not going to contest the 4 unit strength. It's worth 4, but ultimately it's 1 scoring unit. So it was only good for scoring 1 zone. So although he was in my middle, that was worth 2. I flew a wing it into his middle as well, which has no units left. So it would be 2 versus 2 VPs. We would cancel each other's VPs for my 1 wing it, sling his 4 unit strength, 260 over 70 over points. But he did move his horde back into his middle, so that his 1 VP, he would override my Wingit's unit strength, and it would be a 1 VP lead for him in that exchange. We didn't finish that game because he had to leave early. He had to leave on time. We started work late because it was my fault. I had some work delays, and we started the game late. So we just theorized the last few turns, and we figured that I will have 3 scoring units left while he had 2. So if the Naiads cancelled out my Wingit, then it would end up in a draw. And it could be a possible win for me if I could have flown my Wingit to another zone to score, and then he couldn't kill my Wingit. He does have a shooting unit left, Sarakina with Ice Blast. So if it rolled well, the Wingit would die also. But at the end of the day, it was much closer than I thought. If I had more experience, I wouldn't be so flustered about, oh dear, I'm going to lose the game because I can't kill the Ice Naiads. Because at the end of the day, the Ice Naiads was only worth 1 scoring unit, scoring 1 zone, and I could just score the other zones, right? So those are the things I noticed about the game. So I played against another player, Tawe, quite a few weeks back. He has been playing Twilight Kin exclusively for 1 year, throughout until the Clash of Kings release when it got nerfed. But he's still very comfortable with his list, and I lost to him with my Abyss. I made some risky plays and overacted the strength of some of my units, mainly a crone into the flank of Impalers, right? I thought that's mine for sure, but little did I expect. I rolled 1 on the random number of attacks, rolled quite a bit of misses, and then I just didn't take out, and that lost me the game entirely. So I noticed that because I haven't been doing battle reports, I haven't been critical enough in my games and in my plays of thinking what could I have done better in the game, because that is usually what I would analyze in my bad reps. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't analyze the game and say I shouldn't have brought this, I should have brought another unit and I would auto win. So it's always based on the board state, based on what we brought, based on how each turn progressed. I'll always analyze how could I have done better at that moment of time, So the past few weeks and months, I've always been thinking, this list isn't working, change the list, and putting more blame on the list than I should have. Practice is key, right? More reps with your list, maybe with minor tweaks, but similar lists, and tweak as you progress, tweak as you gain experience, and you really need quite a few games experience to have a firm handle of things, right? I played while trying to play different, figure out which list to play. I did play 1 or 2 games of Green Lady, and I think I have a false sense of accomplishment because I played James. I hexed his Bale, and I had 3 elements of shooting, 2 Heart Piercers and 1 Centaur Bray Hunters. That's the Centaur regiment with bows. Although he was hexed, he decided to cast Lightning Bolt still because he thought that the Heart Piercers couldn't reach him. It was out of 24, out of 23 inches. So he thought he was safe. I cast Lightning Bolt on the spot. I'll take a bunch of wounds from Hex, but it's going to be okay because Bale has regen. He's just going to slowly regen it back since I'm not going to die immediately the next turn. But he totally forgot about the Centaur Bray Hunters are able to shoot. So although I'm shooting at it in stealthy, I'm not even sure if that was cover. If it was stealthy and cover, it would be hitting on 6s. But it was at least hitting on 5s, wounding on 5s. I dealt that 1 or 2 wounds. He was heavily wounded from Hex. I think he rolled 4 or 5 successes. That would be 8 or 10 wounds on him already. So I just need to plink a little bit more. And I easily at least wavered it because it was 14-16. But I remember I killed it off. So that was a win. But then that was some data that is a bit skewed by opponent making a mistake that shouldn't normally happen. So if you only have a few games, you're like, oh, I won. This is working for me. So I should continue this. Or you played 1 or 2 games and opponent just happened to roll pretty well on certain combats that they shouldn't have, and then you lost, and then you might make that false conclusion that, oh, this list is not doing it for me, it sucks, I shouldn't be playing this list, moving on. Sometimes it's also a key snake eyes, whether for you or for your opponent, that skew the result of the game. And without the bigger breadth of games for each iteration or each similar iteration of lists, sometimes your conclusion, sometimes what you draw from the game experience may be very skewed. Yep, in conclusion, there's no perfect list. Do give each iteration of lists or variations a bunch of tries before you collected enough data to form conclusion of what things are working and not working. And I know it's difficult because this game does take some time to play, right? A lot of people, they might only be able to play 1 or 2 games a week, and to play 10 games, that's a few months in already. But yeah, do get more games before you come to conclusion of what works and what doesn't work. There's no perfect list. You can build a good enough list, and then it's practice from there. And key thing, your list will have strong and weak matchups, and it's all about practice to know how to dominate the stronger matchups and how to overcome the weaker matchups to come away with either a small loss or draw or even a win or even a small win even, because this is ultimately Kings of War. It's ultimately a scenario game, right? So you can lose the attrition but win on scenario. So that's still very possible. Sometimes you think of a game, you think of a list, you only think about the attrition side of things. Oh, I can't kill, he's going to kill more of my units, therefore I'm going to lose the game. No, not true. You can have less units, less points left on the table, but win the game. So that's something to consider in your strategy of playing Kings of War as well. Yep, that's my episode on the perfect list not existing, all about practice. So with that, heading off this weekend to Clash of Kings Asia. I'm not 100% confident, although I'm playing Goblins again, but I have not a lot of reps with Goblins, and I hope to get 1 or 2 more reps before I head off to the tournament. I will be hopefully making battle reports of all the tournament games, and so keep a lookout for that. And yep, signing off. And I do have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/newbiedice. If you are so inclined, do toss a coin to your content creator. That's why I have a Patreon on. I can't promise any rewards for Patreon supporters, but nonetheless, if you are able to support, I really appreciate it. I know I have 1 Patreon supporter now. Yep, I used to have more, but people move on. It's okay. And I haven't been super consistent with my content creation as well. So I'd like to thank my remaining patrons still, 1 Peep Anonymous. With that, I'll see you in the next content that I'm going to put out. Thank you. I'm going to put out. Thank you. I'm going to put out. Thank you. I'm going to put out. Thank you.